Welcome back to Red Cedar Radar. I am joined by two familiar faces today to recap Michigan State's game against Central Michigan University. How are you guys this morning?
Doing good. Up a little late last night, but other than that, feeling pretty good.
That's good. That's good. So, first thing I wanted to mention is that Jimmy Buffett passed away. So, may he rest in peace and may Margaritaville live on forever. Um, the next thing I wanted to mention is both Paul and Brendan covered the game and were in the press box. So they have kind of a unique perspective today as we talk about how um, our Friday night kickoff game at Spartan Stadium went. How was it in the press box? And do you have any points just kind of like off the bat about how the night went?
Yeah, I thought it was good. It's always good from get the press box perspective, kind of get the all 22 view. We had Chase Glasser, our film expert, sitting next to us, so that was kind of cool. Kind of picking his brain a little bit, kind of understanding a little bit of the X's and O's more, and kind of the strategy behind why the coaches did this, why the coaches did that. So yeah, I'm sure we'll get into the specifics here in a bit, but I enjoy watching the game from the press box. It's a great perspective.
Yeah, for sure. Paul, anything to add?
No, it's definitely, yeah, as Brendan mentioned, it was very useful to be able to sit next to Brendan and, hear, or not Brendan, Chase. Brendan's right here, also next to me, but not Chase. It was interesting to sit next to Chase and hear his perspective on some of the plays that went well and why they went well and some of the plays that went poorly.
Okay, so you're in the press box. Chase was there giving you kind of the inside scoop of some different schemes and stuff. But talk to me a little bit more about what your dedicated roles were for game day, what specific things each of you handled.
Yeah, well, we had a big crew this time. We had actually four of us up there in the press box, and so we were able to kind of divide and conquer and kind of share notes among the four of us about what we were seeing. Had a couple different pairs of binoculars too, which is helpful to, spot which defensive lineman or offensive lineman is in for that particular snap. But I was basically handling some of the message board duties, trying to keep the group on Spartans Illustrated's premium message board up to date on what was going on, especially on stuff that we felt you maybe couldn't see from the press box. So that was primarily my role, and then Brendan was doing a little bit different stuff.
Yeah, I got there. I got to the press box probably around 5:15 ish. There's like I was in charge of tweet duties for the game. So if you follow Spartans Illustrated on Twitter, do that. Step one, and then step two. If you read the tweets, that was me. So if my grammar's off or whatever, come yell at me. But yeah, I got to the press box at like 5:15, 5:20. There was breaking news right away. Terry Roberts was confirmed that he left the program, so that was kind of breaking news. Got a story out on that. Also, the availability report, the new thing that's required by the Big Ten, that actually makes our jobs a lot easier. I think it's good for the fans as well. Jaron Mangum was questionable. Nick Samek was questionable. So during warmups, kind of just keeping an eye out for them, what they're doing during warmups. The binoculars were definitely helpful for that reason. So yeah, just kind of keeping an eye out on those injuries, and tweeting was my job.
I saw that injury report and I thought that that was like very slick because for a long time in the press box, it's been I don't see him. Where is he? Is he injured? What's up? Like we got to figure out. I don't. He's not on the field. So yeah, that does make our job much easier. You're right. Um, so yes, follow us on Twitter and check out our premium message board if you're interested in subscribing to Spartans Illustrated. It was great stuff over there. Good conversations during the game. So check it out if you're interested. We're running a promo right now, and I can put that information in the description of the episode. Okay, I want to get into the nitty gritty stuff a little bit more. Let's talk quarterbacks. When did you guys find out who was going to start, and kind of how did that go over in the press box?
Well, I think we actually we had a little bit of inside information. David Harns was able to inform us that he had heard maybe a few days before that Kim was going to be named the starter, and that did turn out to be the case. I don't think officially we knew until he actually put the helmet on and got into the huddle for the first snap, as I recall. I don't, or was that announced? Actually, that was probably announced during the pregame that I missed because I got caught in traffic. So Brendan was the responsible member of the team as far as that goes. But It wasn't really a surprise. I mean, I've been saying that Kim was going to be the starter since the spring game. That seemed like that was clearly the direction that they were going. Um, but so that was certainly good to see that confirmed. And then I think the only question was how many snaps would Hauser get, which did that was a bit interesting how that played out.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah. Kim talked to the media in the post game press conference. He said he knew like a week and a half ish before the first game that he was going to start. So that kind of makes me think that he won this job pretty convincingly in fall camp. And yeah, Mel Tucker announced that Norcam was going to start on his pregame radio show. So fans that tuned into that knew a little bit beforehand that he was going to start. But yeah, like Paul said, a little inside info. We knew Kim was going to start. So yeah, I thought he played all right. A little bit shaky in the first half, settled in nicely in the second half. So
Yeah, I think all right is a good way to put it. Nerves, I think for sure, for his first game starting. I'll be curious to see if that continues at the beginning of every game or if he can kind of level that off and get in a groove right away. So we'll see. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, I think that it was funny about the jitters because in the post game press conference they brought out Noah Kim and Cal Halliday at first, and then they were asked about jitters, and Noah kind of downplayed it. He's like, no, it wasn't really jitters.
Mm.
But then when Coach Tucker came out and they asked him about the slow start, he's like, I think it was jitters. So I think it was a bit of the jitters for Kim, and I wouldn't expect that to continue. And I think the interesting thing was it wasn't until they got into the end of the first half in that sort of 2 minute drill mindset, and that's when I felt Kim kind of locked in. And then there was that basically big third down pass play along the sideline, I believe to Glover, if my memory is serving, that connected, and he just dropped that in the bucket from like 35 yards or however far that pass was. And kind of once that play hit, then after that he seemed to get into a groove. And I would expect if there is jitters going forward that to be minimized. I think your first game as a starter is always going to be your first game, and once you get past that, then I think he's going to be okay.
Yeah. Anything else to add, Brendan?
yeah, just going back to the end of that first half, sometimes when you're just forced to push the ball downfield a little bit and the receivers are kind of forced to make plays, forced to, get in the vertical passing game a little bit. I mean, you're it's just the offense can just open a new open a new door, I guess you could say. So I thought it was good. It can push the ball downfield end of the first half there. That kind of kickstarted the offense that bled into the second half, and Michigan State had a really good second half.
First play of the game ended in something kind of odd. So Elante Brown was down. Did you guys get any information about what was going on in the press box while he was down or when he was carted off, or did they kind of give no info?
Yeah, we did. We didn't know. We just saw the replay. It looks like he had a little. Maybe he hit the Central Michigan guy with his shoulder, maybe with a little the side of his head there. So maybe a little bit of head trauma there. But yeah, he got carted off. He was moving his extremities. We saw that. I guess he cleared. I don't know what he cleared, but cleared the doctor's orders. Came back later in the first half, which we were all surprised at.
Yeah, I mean, all we could do was look down at the field with our binoculars and kind of see what we could see. And I think that was during the commercial break of the broadcast, and he was just surrounded by MSU's medical staff. And we saw them bring the backboard out, and that
Mm-hmm.
always, you never want to see that in any in any football game. But as Brendan mentioned, he was moving his extremities, and there was something like a 20-minute delay or 15 20-minute delay. And then when he did come back, like there was disbelief. Like we heard it announced in the like the announcement. I think it's the general stadium announcement that you can sort of hear in the press box, even though there is a fair amount of sound cancellation there. And we're like, Elante Brown, like was that right? Like we're like checking the replay on the screen and looking with the binoculars and like, is that really number 0? Are we sure that's not Chuck Brantley? And then you see A Brown. It's like, no, that was actually him. Okay. So yeah, that was shocking. And but Coach Tucker was asked if he'd ever seen anything like that at the end of the press conference, and he was tired at the end of the game too. Tucker was he was tired, and he's like, I don't know, it's late. I don't remember ever seeing that, but you're pushing my memory to come up with that. So yeah, that was unique.
Yeah. Well, I mean, good that he's back. Kind of crazy that he's back. Hopefully, like Brennan said, he cleared everything and there was nothing else going on. Obviously, they're careful with that sort of stuff. So it must have been an all clear. So good news, I guess, but crazy first play. Okay, let's talk a little bit more about let's see. So I was looking at my notes before because I was taking notes on my phone at the game like a nerd. And I had written, Carr, question mark, question mark, question mark, because he had some crazy drops, and I think he ran the wrong route once and just kind of looked like he wasn't ready to go. I don't know exactly what to say. Any points on how he played? Obviously, he got a touchdown, so he figured it out for that. But any notes and anything from the press conference on that at all?
Go ahead, Brandon.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to jump the gun too much, but the receivers didn't really help out Kim a whole lot in that first half. Mosley had a big drop. Carr struggled a little bit with the dropsies. I thought the touchdown catch was incredible. Got a foot down, hauled it in. Tough catch, defender right in his face. So yeah, Carr's a guy that he's going to be relied on this year at the tight end position. He's the best pass catcher at that position. He's probably one of the best pass catchers on the team behind Trey Mosley, in my opinion. So he's going to be a guy that when you go up against Washington and some in the Big Ten teams that they're going to play, he's going to need to to catch these passes really, and the dropsies. Hopefully, that's gone after game one here.
Yeah, and I mean, I do think that they made a concerted effort to use Carr as a weapon in the first half, especially. And I just feel like Kim and Carr were not quite in sync because I mean, he was targeted. I was trying to find the number 6 or 7 times, and I think that touchdown catch was the only one he brought in. And it was some of it was Kim's fault. He airmailed it to him a couple times, but some of it was Carr's fault. I think the ball hit him in the hands a couple times, and he just didn't reel it in. So um, hopefully that chemistry. I don't know if there's a chemistry issue between the two. I don't mean to say that, but like hopefully those two guys can get on the same page. Um, but I think the good news is that we did see some of those younger receivers did start to make some plays in the second half, and that was encouraging to be able to see that, because that was one of the big question marks coming in is, who the weapons of the skill positions were going to be. And I think we did get some answers to some of those questions last night.
So let's talk more about offense. Any other positive points that you saw that you want to address or that was addressed in the press conference?
Yeah, like Paul said, I think the receivers played really well. Those young receivers, Glover had 75 yards. Fitzpatrick had 70 yards. I think he had a 72-yard reception as well. He also had a negative 2-yard reception, which is at 70 yards. So I thought Tyrell Henry did really well in the return game. I think he had 2 receptions. He had that one-hand grab, which was incredible. So I was impressed with those 3 in the receiving game. Kind of eased my nerves a little bit with the wide receivers because we knew going in Mosley was going to be probably the go-to guy, the veteran leader of that group, but who's going to be 2? Who's going to be 3? We don't know. So that kind of eased my nerves there. I was also impressed with Nate Carter. I thought he had a good game. Broke 100 yards, had a couple big runs. Even that first run of the game, he broke it for 31. So I was impressed with Carter. I think the running backs, I think they got a solid 1-2 with Carter and Berger, and Mangum did not play. So, and he's a big body. He's a bowling ball. So he's a guy you can throw in there in short yardage. We saw 4th and 1 going from the shotgun, which is a little bit questionable in my opinion. But yeah, those are situations where you could use Mangum and he can get maybe that extra inch and get that first down.
Yeah, I think that's a good point about Mangum, the running back on those short yardage situations. And Tucker was asked about the 4th and 1 calls in the press conference, and I don't know if I've ever seen him blow off a question before, but he very clearly blew off that question. He was, I think it was Chris Solari that asked it, and Mel was again like, "It's really late. That's not something I really want to get in. We don't have time to get into that today, but you can ask Jay Johnson next time you see him." So, but he did it in a very kind of lighthearted way. But yeah, he had no interest in talking about that very clearly, which I guess you could read that multiple ways. Um, but yeah, I think Nathan Carter did. That was one of the questions at running back, and I think that was answered. Nathan Carter is kind of the clear number one. He had he had 2 very good runs, and then in the middle it was a little not as good. It was funny because Berger being the number 2 back, he also had a pretty good first run. He picked up like 8 or 10 yards. But then some of the runs in the middle were not as good. They had a little bit of a lull after that. And I think some of that, one of the questions that maybe didn't get answered as positively was the role of the offensive line, because they didn't really get the push that we were expecting against the MAC defense. And you do have to wonder, what the running game did get off to a good start, but not really a dominating start. And so as the competition gets tougher and you start running into some of those Big Ten defensive lines, you do wonder how that's going to look. Now we did have some question about the center position because Nick Samac was questionable. He did wind up playing. He rotated in. I think Dallas Fincher still took more snaps, the backup center. So maybe that disrupted things. But in general, they didn't rotate much on the offensive line, which was also a surprise. We expected, a lot more heavy usage of some of the younger players early on. And, some of the younger players we didn't really see much until the second half. At least that was, we weren't looking super specifically at that, but that was our observation from the press box, is not much rotation on the O-line.
So, and I think it maybe was you, Brendan, when I had you on a couple weeks ago, that we talked about kind of that depth in a couple of those positions and how that was different from last year, with the injuries that they had last year and everything. And I was actually surprised by that too. I was trying to keep track of numbers. I didn't have binoculars. That's something I'll add for next game. But yeah, I didn't notice that they changed things around very often, which I wasn't sure if that was good or bad. I mean, good that those guys can stay out there and we have our main guys that can go the whole time, but I was a little bit surprised by that also. So a good point that I wonder, if that will continue or if they'll start kind of slowly bringing in those younger guys as the season goes on. We'll see. But Paul, you made a good point. We were playing Central Michigan University, right? I mean, and they have a strong history, a strong team, but we have some very strong opponents coming up. And a lot of things I think need to get cleaned up before we meet some of those opponents. Let's switch over and talk about defense a little bit. What do you think? Overall points about the defense before I have some specifics for you. Anything to share?
Yeah, I thought the run defense played well. Central only had, looking at it right now, 123 rushing yards. So I thought the run defense played pretty well. Pass rush was good. Think trying to find the sack number. I can't find it. 3 sacks for Michigan State. So yeah, I thought they got a lot of pressure on the quarterback. But Central Michigan, they didn't have a vertical passing game at all. That was non-existent. They had 96 pass yards the whole game. They couldn't push the ball downfield in the passing game. So yeah, the secondary looked good, but also Central Michigan did not test them. Those two things can be both true at once. So I don't think Michigan State secondary. I don't think we'll know what they're truly made of until Michael Penix comes to town and Washington Huskies come in. So yeah, defense looked good, but also keep in mind the Central Michigan offense, they didn't really challenge them.
Yeah, I would agree. And I think that definitely the front seven played very well. And something interesting in contrast to the offensive line is we saw a lot of rotation on the defensive line. Like they were shuttling guys in and out. Even in that first series where Central, I think, held the ball for 15 plays, which was by far their longest drive of the day, like by a factor of 3. And midway through that drive, we were looking down and like it's like a hockey line change. There's a completely different 4 set of guys on that line. And especially towards the end of last year, they didn't have that many guys to suit up. Like they couldn't do that. And I have to wonder if that was a major contributing factor to the stop that the defense had on that first possession, because Central had several cracks in the red zone and they wound up turning the ball over on fourth and goal. And if they don't rotate those D linemen, I think it's quite possible that Central scores the touchdown on that first drive, because they were very clearly trying to get a touchdown on that first drive, and I don't blame them. So I think that was a pretty major factor. And the D line, I think, did play very well. The quarterback was a little on the elusive side, and they finally started getting to him late in the game. But that was a positive. And then as far as the defensive backs, I agree with Brendan. I don't think we really know. But we did see some good things out of Dylan Tatum at corner. One thing that Chase observed that was interesting is that they put him in press coverage quite a bit more, especially compared to Chuck Brantley on the other side. And it was unclear if that was a schematic decision or if that was more an athletic decision, that they trusted Tatum to match up one-on-one with some of those guys. And, he made some good plays, and there were some other DBs that made some good plays here or there. But, I think we also saw um, Jaden Mangum get it kind of turned around on the touchdown that Central scored. He kind of took a bad step and got undressed a little bit. So, he's this is the second year he's seen major time. So you'd like to not see that, but that is a bit of a concern going forward.
So you saw Kim and Halliday come out for the press conference. Did Halliday have anything interesting in addition to say about the defense?
He didn't say a whole lot. Now that I'm trying to think back of what he actually did say, I mean, I think he led the team in tackles. He clearly had a good game. He was kind of everywhere.
So Paul had the opportunity to field some questions from Henry. Give a kind of overview about what he said about the game and kind of how he thought things went.
Yeah, we were able to interview a few of the different players in kind of a media scrum at the very end of the press conference, and I had a chance to talk a little bit with Tyrell Henry, and there were kind of two main points that he was really asked about, and one of which, of course, was the one-handed catch that he made in the second half, and I forget whether that was the last touchdown or how far that extended the lead, but there's a lot of comments on whether that would make the Sports Center top 10, which I haven't checked, so I don't know if that made it or not, but he was clearly interested to see if that would happen, and I think his teammates were kind of egging him on a little bit about that. But he also talked a little bit about the wide receiver room and how they're all very supportive of each other, and they're pushing each other, and it sounds like they have a very good chemistry in that room. And I did think that was interesting because when Keon Coleman departed, there was some question as to how that would affect the chemistry in that wide receiver room, because he was going to be most likely the top dog in that room, but sometimes that's not always a good thing. And so the fact that we did see so much contribution from so many different wide receivers, and the way that he spoke about his teammates, I thought was very positive. And I think Trey Mosley being sort of the elder statesman of that room, just you know, it's not necessarily good or bad, but I think Trey maybe has more of a team mindset than Coleman may have. And so, you know, I think maybe we saw a little bit about that potentially in that interview. And then he also talked about, they asked him whether he practiced one-handed catches, and he made some interesting comments there, that he said that basically after practice they'll do some more unconventional drills, or maybe he will try to catch it with one hand. And his point was that you never, when you're in the heat of the game, the quarterback's throw is not always going to be perfectly accurate, or you're going to have to try to get open, and the window's going to be tight. And so it sounded like he I wouldn't say he practices one-handed catches, but he didn't say that he doesn't practice one-handed catches. So that was pretty exciting. And then the other point he was asked about is just the impact of losing Elante Brown in that first game, and how that may have impacted the sideline or impacted him personally. And it clearly, I think, rattled the team a bit, and that might have been part of the explanation for that bit of the slow start. I think it was jitters, but when you have a guy get carted off the field literally on the opening kickoff of the season, that's going to impact anybody. So I think that they sort of said all the right things, but I think that was very clearly on the player's mind. And he again, I think, mentioned that one third down pass to Glover kind of reignited the excitement on the sidelines. So he kind of affirmed what we were kind of suspecting in the press box.
That's a good point. Having someone go down on that first play kind of takes the air out of your lungs a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a good point and something to be remembered. That's definitely right. Well, great points, Paul. Brendan, give me your grade of what you would say how the team did in this first matchup against Central Michigan.
Yeah, I thought the defense played well for like 95% of the game outside of that first drive there. Offense shaking the first half, got it going. Pretty much a really good second half. So taking that into consideration, I give them probably B minus, I would say. I think that's accurate. B minus, B area, somewhere around there. Yeah, like I said, offense shaky a little bit to start. Receivers had a couple drops, so that wasn't fun to see. But they settled in nicely, got it going in the second half, kind of wore out Central Michigan, which was good to see against a MAC opponent there. Defense played well, was suffocating throughout. So yeah, I'd give them a B minus or a B.
Yeah, I would say definitely saw some good things, but as you mentioned, some areas to be cleaned up. And it sounds like, based off what you guys have said, um, the guys that you talked to in the press conference, even Kim and Halliday, that kind of took like the main questions, they noted that, there's some things that they need to work on and there's things that they need to clean up. So we'll see if those things are executed and changed next week. Anything else that you want to mention about the game, guys?
No, not specifically. It's always fun to be back in Spartan Stadium. Spartan marching band. Look at halftime. I did actually post some pictures of them in the feed. It was a Disney theme, so apparently they don't have Spectrum cable. But no, it's always good to be back on campus. It was a good time, beautiful night. Um, it was a beautiful day for football.
Yeah, we were joking
You're
around with
absolutely
Chase,
right.
and we
I'm
said
sorry, go
the next film room piece might need to be on the marching band.
ahead.
And we did confirm Chase has
People would
marching
love
band
that.
experience. Yes,
Yep,
Oh,
that was
okay.
there's
confirmed.
All
potential
right.
there.
Hmm.
We'll have to get with him about that. All right, guys. Well, thanks so much for joining. Brendan will be kind of a staple here for our recap episodes, and Paul, I think, will probably be in and out, probably a regular face also. My goal would be to kind of gather up the guys, the people that attended the game in the press box and have the press conference, points to share for our recaps. So this will be a weekly thing that we'll do. Thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. Like I said, the information about the promo that we're running right now for Spartans Illustrated, the Spartans Illustrated site, will be in the description. And we will be pumping out quite a bit of football content over the next couple days before we get ready for Richmond next Saturday at home at Spartan Stadium. The Spiders are coming to town, which I love that mascot. I have to
It's a good
say,
mascot.
it's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, solid.
Um, Thanks so much for watching. And like I said, you can find this podcast on YouTube or anywhere else that you listen. And see you next week.
Bye, everybody.